So if we move away from controlling children's own consumption of tobacco and look at the consumption of tobacco by people who take care of them under different sorts of settings, there are some obvious difficulties. If the carer is an employee, or the caring is taking place in a public place, well, it's covered by the general smoking in public places rules, and that's fairly clear. It's not so clear when you get into public places that are open air, like open air parks, swimming pools, the areas around schools which aren't actually on school property, and so on. And it's absolutely clear that we've got no basis for controlling what happens in the privacy of the home, except under some very special circumstances. And those special circumstances are where the child is considered to be at risk. So if you have a child who's, let's say, severely asthmatic, and they're considered to be at serious risk to their health from the point of view of children's social services, you might be able to use Children Act provisions to require parents not to smoke around them, on the grounds that it was dangerous to their health. But it may not be so easy to argue that. In fact, most people would argue you shouldn't use that approach if you were talking about an ordinary healthy child. Because we think that extending the reach of these sort of controls into the ordinary home is something we shouldn't do. Just as we don't do it for other kinds of things. There is room, a lot of room, for saying, well, some parts of people's private lives are private, and we should just leave them to it, even if those choices are not ones we share. There might be an argument for saying you should extend smoking bans into homes where there are young children, because the arguments for prevention of harm are very strong, just as they are in the workplace. But we don't do that on the grounds that we think the home is a private place. And the more appropriate approach would be simply to just generally keep shifting the culture so that parents don't want to smoke inside the home, think it's a bad thing to do, just as most parents wouldn't leave sexually explicit material lying around. So that's one sort of approach, and it's not an approach that requires a lot of local authorities or central government. In fact, arguably, it may come better from the mass media, civil society, and so on anyway. There are contexts where local government have to take a stand, and the most complicated one is probably that around placement of children in foster homes or adoption services. And many local authorities have adopted policies where they will at least consider whether placing a child in a home where one or more of the resident adults smokes is sufficient ground to not place that child, or to place conditions. And that follows advice from various people, including the societies that make advice on child placement and child protection. This is unpopular, and it's unpopular because the overriding thing is that it's generally considered better for a child to be in a loving home, even if there's smoking around, than it is for them to be in local authority care or in a children's home or other circumstances. And that's a very powerful argument. You are weighing up costs and benefits, and you are looking at what is best for that child. And smoking might be a tiebreaker, or it might be if you had different families where the child could equally happily be placed, or if you could put conditions saying, well, look, if you're going to have the child in the home, then you must not smoke there, and make that part of the agreement with the parents. And I think most foster parents would easily agree to that. So that's one line of approach, but it's not an approach that you can use generally with parenting. where you can with looked after children. There are some constraints on what you can do. The Children Act requires the best interests of the child to be placed first. The Human Rights Act protects the privacy of family life. But there are also other conventions, like the UN Convention on Rights of the Child, which seek to promote the child's welfare, positively look at what will be good for the child, as well as, you know, preventing direct harm to the child. And you could see promoting smoke-free homes as part of that.